Good morning. My name is Jason Coyle, Operations Section Chief for Southwest Area Team 1. Today is Friday, May 20th, and this is your morning operational update. Yesterday on the 209 on the document we used to report our fires, acreage, and everything up to our higher headquarters, we reported the fire at 303,341 acres. So that's the same for those of you that are keeping track as the day before. And that's because last night, the plane that we use to provide our really accurate infrared mapping had a mechanical issue and was unable to fulfill that mission. So that doesn't mean that we don't have other ways of seeing where the fire is and where the fire has become more active. It just means that we lose that ability to do accurate mapping. We have two different forms of satellite heat detection that we use that come over about every 12 hours. And then we also have a different aircraft that yesterday we were able to use, even in the higher winds that shut down some of the other air show that I'll talk about in a minute. And it was able to give us infrared video of the fire's perimeter in Division Mike and Division Kilo in the two areas that we're most concerned about. So we still have other mechanisms to do that in addition to crews on the ground and our air attack plane when they're up. But the way we give you the best, most accurate data on infrared, we were unable to do last night due to that mechanical issue. So the percent containment right now is shown at 40%, and there's 2,408 personnel assigned to the incident on all three zones. So a little bit more about the aircraft. So yesterday we had to shut down all tactical aircraft at about 1100, and then it was shortly thereafter, around noon, that our air attack was unable to stay over the fire because of the turbulence that they experienced, because of the mountain waves that, the roller coaster, if you will, of wind that occurs when it comes off of the flats from Taos and then hits those mountains. And what they can do is they can go up higher, but they're using their eyes to tell us where the fire is. So you can only do that for so long. They tried that, and then once it got so high that they couldn't provide us with actionable information intelligence, then they shut down. So we did later on get the fire watch plane up, like I said, because they fly much higher, and they were able to get above where that turbulence from the mountain waves was. Today, they're talking about that turbulence going up to 45,000 feet. So if that occurs, then we may not even be able to get the fire watch flight, because their cameras are great, but they're not spy satellite quality, I guess. So they can't see what we want to see from that elevation. This morning, it's our intent to get aircraft up over the fire, and I'll talk about where when I go around to the map. And we've actually, ever since we first came to this incident, we adjusted our briefing schedules in recognition of the fact that we were getting into these high wind events almost daily, and the only opportunity we'd have to fly was early in the morning. So lots of rules around how long pilots can be on the clock and can be awake, which, considering the environment they work in, makes a lot of sense. So there's always a trade-off. So when we bring them on early, if we can use them all day, then we may not be able to use them during the heat of the day. We're not worried about that today, so we brought them on early. There was reports of wind shear this morning, and they're still evaluating whether the heavy helicopters can lift off. At least they were about 5 minutes ago. And the reason why, this may be more information than some of you want, but you're going to get it anyways, and that's that the reason that the heavy helicopters may not be able to lift off is because even if the wind speeds allow for the Chinooks to lift, if they try to land above a certain threshold, and I believe it's 20 knots, then they have two blades that the one spins over the top of each other on those huge helicopters. Those blades are mounted on towers, and the engines are hooked to those. And if there's too much wind, it can cause those blades to flex up and flex down in a way that is unpredictable, and then it can cause those blades to run into each other. So that's a big deal, obviously. That means that we can't use that helicopter anymore, and I have no idea how much it costs to fix it, but more importantly for us right now, it means we can't use it anymore. So effort is being made to get them up early, and we'll see how that goes. All right, so talking about yesterday, yesterday was a good day. there's a saying that I like, and it's that hard days don't create leadership, they reveal it. And there was a lot of leadership revealed yesterday all over the fire. When I go around the map, I'll talk about some of the work that was done specifically, but the way people disengaged and engaged in different areas, and the way that they gamed out if this happens, then we're going to do this, and anticipated all those different future states, and then reacted to them in real time, was impressive on all levels. A little bit about Chacon. I know there's been a lot of interest in the Chacon area south. Right now, the fire that's still east of the 121, I'll point on the map, but I just figured it'd be easier to go through this stuff right now so I don't miss anything. That area of fire is still backing down towards those power lines. We're working with Kit Carson, with the power company, to determine if there's any ways that we can isolate certain homes and then re-energize those power lines, even though we may need to de-energize them later as the fire begins to move closer to them. That's being evaluated right now. It's not going to happen today. Today is too windy. Today there's too many variabilities in the environment, and we don't want to add one more risk or one more source of complexity. So we are working on it, and as soon as conditions allow, we're looking for opportunities to reduce the impact of the people in those areas by restoring that power as soon as it's safe to do so. All right, the 518 corridor, work along the homes and everything in there is still continuing. There's crews in Angostura, Tres Ritos, Los Mochas, and they're continuing to not only prep homes out towards the 75, 518 junction, but also to make sure that the homes that are prepped, that they're there and can catch any spots, fire, any embers that land within the dozer lines. So if you can imagine the home, kind of think of it as your fence, right? And some people, you got your home and then you have the rest of your property, then lots of times you have a fence on the edge of that property. Well, now a lot of those properties have a dozer line for a fence. And so if something lands within that dozer line and that could catch the vegetation on fire and move it towards those homes, then crews are continually patrolling that area and have picked up numerous spots and prevented them from impacting any of the structures in that area. All right, so the other thing that is going on is that there's a line that, well, I'll do that at the map. That'll be easier that way. And I'm looking at my little notes here. So the north line, we're continuing to coordinate that action. The north-south line that runs on Osho Ridge to the west of Angel Fire, coordinating that with the east zone, and there's good coordination. There's effort being put in to push that line. Let's see, just a couple other things, then we'll get to the map. The Serpent Lake, U.S. Hill, Pot Creek, all those areas that I know have, well, some of those are some of the areas that have significant cultural significance. That's not the way to say that, but are we're monitoring the fire activity in those areas, and we're taking the necessary steps to protect the cultural values that are related to that area. As far as Serpent Lake goes, there's been no damage due to suppression activity or anything, no dozer lines, anything near there, and the fire has continued to move around the lake. And as you know, it's marshy on one side, so it's just kind of moving around that marshy area. And when we could see through the smoke last night, there wasn't a lot of activity up in that area, and it does not look right now like it has an opportunity to go around Hickory to Peak right there, at least under the conditions we have for the next 24 hours. All right, the other thing that we did yesterday that is going to be beneficial for everything along that 518 corridor is we established a hello well at Scipio. So a hello well is, if you took and cut the top off of a beer can and you scaled that up to be about 20 feet wide, that's a hello well. And so we set that up on an area where the helicopters could reach in there and dip out of it, and using some of the pumps that are used for snowmaking to fill that. And what that'll do is allow us to protect everything along that 518 corridor with shorter turns. So how long a helicopter can stay airborne is primarily based on the amount of fuel they have. The quicker turns we can make to get from water to where we drop it and back increases the amount of water we can deliver with that helicopter. So that's one of the steps we're taking to position ourselves when this wind dies down, to be able to aggressively extinguish the fire perimeter wherever it is, wherever we find ourselves, and anticipating where we think that might be. Regarding the anticipation, we also continue to do modeling, including modeling of the southern perimeter. We're going to do some more of that. We call near-term fire behavior modeling. Some of you may have seen Stuart present those at night, but it's not lost on us the fact that although from North Truchas on the ridge system that goes all the way up to Hickory to Peak, that's a pretty bald ridge, but there's spots of timber that go between there that would get below Lana Largo and then could actually take it up the Santa Barbara drainage towards Penasco. So southern area, the team from the southwest that was there before, and I'm certain the California Team 5 that's taking over the management of that portion of the fire today. That's really probably their primary emphasis is that area down there, and I'm sure when you watch their video they'll speak to that, recognizing that even with their best efforts it may not go as planned, especially with some of the wind events that we've seen. We are continuing to monitor to make sure that it doesn't come up and surprise us coming from the south. So I don't think it will surprise us. So with that, I'll go to the map. And we'll go around the map in a minute, but I just want to tell you that up on the northern end, the indirect line that runs north-south from above Pot Creek all the way over to above the Luna Fire Scar, which would be west of Black Lake, and then working all the way up to the north to Highway 64. Work is ongoing in there. It's slow going because of the amount of timber and stuff in there, but it is actually there's progress being made every day. And on the lower end, when it was more in the PJ and the lighter, the lighter timber, if you will, they've been able to make it pretty close to 5 miles over the last few days. So that's looking really good. Slower going as they improve this whole road system on the east, and then back to the west. But once they're up on top of the ridge and moving to the west, the progress will increase. But it's still a multi-day, if not multi-week process to get all this line put into place. And then once they get to this corner here where you see this double bracket as a branch break, we'll be evaluating what's occurring and determine whether it's the best option is to continue to push down here to the south towards the northern end of the fire there in Division Kilo west of Chacon, or whether it's that they'll keep going and then we've already gotten this dozer line in and these guys can push up from the south to the north. So the important part is that we want to get this line in. All right, so let's drill down on that. Yesterday, under very strong west winds, 40 miles an hour, they got spots outside of their hand line to the northeast of the fire's edge. The crews, they pulled out at first. We always talk about that disengage, re-engage, and got into the hard black, making sure that they were in a safe place. Because I tell you what, this doesn't show it, but from here to here is probably 1,000 feet of elevation gain in a mile. So when you see a spot land below you and you're in the thick timber, you won't stay up there if you're smart, because if you do, really bad things can happen. So you have to pull out and then you have to engage from a direction that it's safe to do so. A lot of work, hard on your body. The hotshot crews that were in there and one that was loaned to us from the eastern zone yesterday, that's the work that they engaged in. And so far the fire hasn't moved much. This blue arrow right here, it's something I drew on there. And this is one of my biggest concerns today. And if those aircraft are able to get up, that's the first thing they're going to do is they're going to drop water on any of the areas of heat that they see on this northern end of this finger of fire. Because what we don't want it to do is get around here and push out to the east underneath the Luna's Fire Scar and then towards Guadalupita and Sierra Bonita and above Chacon. Going down to the rest of this, there's a little bit of activity here by Martinez Pond at the easternmost end of the Duran Creek, but it was blowing back into itself. So underneath that wind, even though there's some activity in this little pocket, the wind was pushing all the embers and everything back into the interior. The rest of this dozer line all the way down to 518 was looking really good. Another piece of impressive work yesterday, I told you about early in the morning, we had one spot that we used the unmanned aerial system, the drone with its infrared camera to guide a hotshot crew into. Later during the day, there's other spots that were identified on the side of this slope above Angostura. So actually it's called Angostura Ridge, so to the east of Angostura and to the northeast of Highway 518. And to the best of our knowledge, what they could see with the IR camera last night with the drone and what we saw yesterday with that Firewatch aircraft and what we're able to visually see as far as any smoke coming up, that they've been able to catch all these spots. I can't tell you how big of a deal that is. we know we have another really bad wind day today, and the wind is projected to have more of a southerly component. So instead of due west, blowing straight, more of a southwesterly component. And we still may get fire established over in here, but if we can keep it in this box by the end of the day, that's someplace I feel like we can grab it and in short order and not have to do all this, not have to fill all this in. So same aggressive effort that we did yesterday, higher winds. Our fire behavior analyst gave us a unpleasant statistic that this is the sixth. This is one of the top 6 as far as weather days, and the other days that had that type of weather contributed to growth of up to 30,000 acres and above 10,000 acres on each one of those days. So we don't like to hear that. We're preparing for that, and we'll see what happens throughout the day. All right. So the other work that was being done was this. This is a dozer line. Those little X's. A dozer line tying in from the west side of Tres Ritos up to the what is the westernmost tip of the fire. So I'll talk about these red arrows in a minute, but getting that tied in there, then crews are able to start working around this edge. And this is just heavy. It's mid-slope, so you're halfway up a steep slope. The fire's laterally across the slope, and you're trying to pick up this edge going over heavy deadfall where you have to cut multiple logs out of the way to make a foot on your line. So crews are in there doing that work. It's hard work. It's slow work to get all the way around here. In addition, we had one of our operations chiefs go up and plug in up here yesterday, and we're working on executing a plan to get around this edge of the fire and improve this road system all the way up to Ripley Point. We actually have staffed this division now. So we have a division supervisor, and we're moving equipment and stuff into here. We created our second heavy metal group. So this is heavy metal group number 1, and now this is heavy metal group number 2. Just like it sounds, it's where the dozers and all the processors, the feller bunchers and everything, we put them together into what we call timber task forces so they can work more efficiently. We're looking at the best way to get a line in here all the way up to the Ripley Point area and then tied back into the fire's edge to keep the fire from moving west towards, I'm just calling it Penasco. I understand that there's Lanalago and other areas in here, but basically the Penasco area and the Picaris Pueblo area. Structure protection work continued along through Los Mochis and out to the west, and then we continued to identify what we would need to do on 518 in the event that we had to use that as a holding feature. Another thing that we're working to identify the best way to address is this little gray line I'm tracing right here is the power line, is the Kit Carson transmission line that crosses to the east side of the road about Pot Creek and then stays in the forest. So we recognize that is the only electrical feed into Penasco and into the Picaris Pueblo. And so understanding what we can do as far as holding the fire on the east side of that line, if that becomes necessary, and taking into account how important the Pot Creek area is and not doing any damage in there, is going to be key to us, to our success. And we also, as we're working on this plan, on this line down here, the acequias, that some of them I understand go all the way down to Mora, we're making sure that we're considerate of where we place our line and everything to lessen to the absolute maximum extent possible any of the damage that we do to those areas. So when we talk about timing about things, we'll get to these red arrows. So the blue arrows, or they're purple, but they probably look blue, are the concerns about the fire growth today. So coming around the tip here in Kilo, and then coming in off of the Angostura, off of the Knob area, and then north of Angostura, south of Angostura, and coming over here to the northeast. That's the areas that we're concerned about today. As this cold front passes us, tomorrow we're going to see, or actually it sounds like starting late tonight, we're going to see northeast winds and then southeast winds, strong winds during the day, almost as strong as today. One of the key things that we're considerate of is that you have this big ridge that runs through Hickory to Peak and all the way down to the south. So when you have true west winds, that ridge may be creating some sheltering. It may also be creating a lot of turbulence that changes wind direction here. If you have a southeast wind that's coming down like this, there's not a big ridge there. So although the wind could be the same speed at 20 feet, or they could estimate the same transport wind speeds, they call it, the higher up winds, this wind that's reported at 30 miles an hour may really be 40 miles an hour. And this wind that's reported at 30 miles an hour may really only be 25 miles an hour. We don't know, but we're conscious of the fact that that is something that we need to prepare for. Part of that preparation is that dozer line that was put in there and the improvement done to it. And the other part of it is working to control this fire's edge as much as we can to eliminate the likelihood that we get another 3-mile push like we did before out to the west. Because that push could occur is why we're working on prioritizing getting these lines in and picking favorable terrain on that road towards Bear Mountain, up towards Ripley Point, and preventing that from moving west and then being able to move north of the 518 there towards Las Mochas. Today's going to be a big day, and we've got, hopefully I made it clear to you all that we have multiple different iterations of our plan that we're ready to execute on, depending on what the fire environment throws at us. And we commit to you that there'll be no shiny object syndrome. We don't want to see something happen here and then move it over to deal with something that prevents us from achieving our overall objectives. Everybody's been briefed multiple times on what to expect today, and the leadership that's out in the field is competent and capable of executing, and the crews are ready to do what needs to be done to be successful. There's things beyond our control today that that we're just going to have to respond to, but it is a closely coordinated plan that I know will be well executed within every bit of their ability. So with that, that's the end of the operational update. Thank you.